Welcome to this analysis video. We're going to practice the process orientation, calculation and verification again. We're going to do that with a puzzle from the book by Ramesh RB, Improve Your Chess Calculation. And he rates this puzzle for level 1, 1200 to 1600 players, and he gives you 5 minutes for the whole process, orientation, calculation, verification. I think that's very ambitious. So for players between 1200 and 1500, I will give a hint shortly to make it a little bit easier. And for players above 1500, they could pause the video now, do the process, and then return and check their orientation, calculation, and verification, and see if they found the right solution. So the hint that I'm going to give to players between 1200 and 1500 is the following puzzle from step 4. I was doing this puzzle by Ramesh, and it reminded me immediately of the following puzzle. So this is from step 4, attacking the king. And white to play and win. White is rook down, so white has to mate, basically. And the pawn structure in front of the black king has been compromised. But how to exploit it? Well, we see that the queen on e7 is undefended. But if we just go direct with queen h5, black has the defense f5. So we have to find a way to eliminate the defense f5. And as the queen is on e7 is undefended, is there a way to pin the pawn on f6? Because a pinned piece is a poor defender. And if you ask yourself that question, right, f5 is a defense, e7 is undefended, can we pin the pawn on f6? Then you are able to find a solution. Queen g4, king h8, queen h4 with a win. So keep this motif in mind for our main dish today. So let's return there. Let's start with the orientation. So the knight on d4 is attacking the queen on e2 and the knight on f3. So we are almost forced to take the knight on d4 because the threat of black is too strong, and we cannot move our queen and allow the knight on f3 to damage the pawn structure of the white king. So knight takes d4, queen takes d4 are kind of forced. And then we have to figure out how are we going to follow up after that. Different options. Right? So what are your candidate moves after knight takes d4, queen takes d4? Probably they're like 3. Right? You could try rook d1, knight d5, and knight e4. Because if we do the orientation after knight takes d4, queen takes d4, the battery of bishop b2 and the knight on c3 to the queen on d4 looks very tempting to see if we can exploit it and activate our forces to attack the black king. And after rook d1, right, so knight takes d4, queen takes d4, rook d1, it feels a bit tame because the queen can escape horizontally over the 4th rank to f4 or h4. So too tame. So that leaves us with 2 options, knight e4 and knight e5. And if you look to knight e4, right, and you look to this position, the queen can return to d8. So after rook d1, the queen can move horizontally, and after knight e4, the queen can go back to d8 and defend the knight on f6. And it feels not the most forcing and interesting way. So knight d5 is the move that we want to look at. So we have knight takes d4, queen takes d4, knight d5. The knight on d5 is attacking the bishop on e7, and the bishop on b2 is attacking the queen on d4. So black has basically one move, and that's to move the queen and defend the bishop on e7, right? It's a double attack, and one of the targets defends the other. Queen c5. Now we have to figure out if we in that position can find a forced win. We have two attackers on f6, so we have a feeling that's promising, because we can damage the pawn structure in front of the king. But how should we capture on f6 with the bishop or the knight? And before we said we don't like to give the queen options to defend, right, with queen d8 or with queen f4 and queen h4 after the rook d1 variation. And so the knight on d5 is currently limiting the queen from moves like queen g5. So let me show it for people who have difficulty following it. What are we talking about? Visualization is important, but let's get everyone on the same page. So we have this position, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to take on f6 with the bishop or with the knight. And I said, intuitively, the bishop makes more sense. We have to verify, because if we take with the knight, then the queen is defending h5 and can go to g5 and help in the defense. So taking with the bishop means that we continue to lock out the queen. So bishop takes f6, black cannot take the knight because we take on e7, and black is forced to take back. In that position, there are two ways to take back, and I think bishop takes f6 is the easiest way to win for white, easiest to refute. Can you see the refutation of bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6? Right? When we visualize that position, we notice that the bishop on b7 is undefended, and we can play queen e4, threatening mate on h7, and after g6 we play knight f6 check, king g7, and then we take with the queen on b7 and we win a piece. Right, so I was talking about this line. So let's go back, because visualization is very important to practice your analysis skills. And we play bishop takes f6, and then we have to visualize g takes f6. And now, right, think about the puzzle that we did as a hint to this position, which was this puzzle. Now we go back, puzzle from step 4 in the step method, and we are here, and we are playing bishop takes f6, g takes f6. And then you say, okay, I can now apply the motif from step 4 from the puzzle by playing after bishop f6, g takes f6, knight takes c7, queen takes h7, queen g4, king h8, and now queen h4, pinning the pawn, so f5 is not possible. Are we done with the process? No, because we have 3 steps: orientation, calculation and evaluation, and verification. And we didn't do the last step. So think about, if you were black, what would you do? Did we consider the strongest reply of our opponent? right? So let's go back. We are here. And when I was looking at this position, I was thinking that after knight takes e7, I know that I will get mated or lose my queen if I take back. So I would play king h8, and I would say the knight on e7 is trapped. So part of the verification is to find out how to win, right? The strongest reply of the opponent, in my opinion, is king h8, where black is saying the knight is trapped. I am a pawn up, right? So if you win a pawn with untrapping the knight, we're equal, and it's my best opportunity here, and I threaten as black, right, to I threaten as black to play queen e7, and suddenly there's no longer this spin that is this maneuver with queen g4, queen h4, because the king has already moved to h8. So in the verification, my question to you is what to do? What would you do? Can you find a way to save the knight? And so this is part of the verification and considering the strongest reply. And it surprised me that Ramesh is not addressing this idea at all in his answer to this puzzle. So how to save the knight? Can you find a way? There's of course two ways to go about this: to look at this position, or to think about, can I change the move order, right? So I could say after g takes f6, I'm not going to take, I'm going to change the move order and play queen g4, king h8, and now play queen h4. Well, this looks very interesting, right? And after f5, knight takes e5, white threatens queen f6 mate. But after queen e5, I still have not saved my knight. And it might be, right, that this is winning, but if you look all the way back, right, to the position that we have on hand, and let's say that you are in the beginning of the line and you have played knight d5, and you have to visualize all the way forward to this position, it's very hard to imagine, like, can I save the knight, yes or no, and at what cost? So changing the move order is not the solution. So let's go back to this position. So no queen takes e7, but king h8. Can you find a way to save the knight? And the way to save the knight is knight d5, e takes d5, and queen h5, and white is winning. So that was the practice for today of our process, orientation, calculation, and verification. And I hope that you also saw that knowing certain motifs, like in this case, this step 4 puzzle, with the idea of pinning the pawn on f6 by playing queen g4, queen h4, can be very helpful in real life situations, because this position at the start occurred 21 times in the chess-based mega database. Thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe and like this video.